Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Resolve. In the last episode, we kind of established that there was a bargain between Genshin-san and the British government, or we couldn't establish who exactly it is that the bargain was forged with. But we do have new witness testimony here that will help us establish what actually was going on. So let's just do that. The Asogi Papers.
As the warden is responsible for the condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asogi and kept watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
I only found out about the Asogi Papers when a directive came telling me to pawn them. The document was in the fold of a fellow's robe that was left in his cell, a kimono, I think it's called.
In his kimono? That's a lie! We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all his clothes. It can't be true.
Well, you're not satisfied with calling me a liar in the woods, huh? You weird one-finger.
Oh, there's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have any hold over me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take on my craven. Of course. Is that what you're going to do, is it? Are you going to give me a good shake again, or are you too scared? Gah!
Little and large, what a double act. We comply with Asogi's will as far as was possible. All of his personal effects were delivered to his family home in Japan. As a courtesy of the homeland of the most notorious killer of our country has ever seen.
And we were much obliged. I can confirm that all my father's belongings arrived safely.
Oh, yeah, you cannot deny the handwriting is that of your old man, huh?
Yes, there's no mistaking that it's my father's brushwork.
Really? And this last will and testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we can safely assume that the convict was merely prattling, knowing that his end was nigh. So, counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please.
Yes, my lord.
Alright, let's see what we can drag out of them. Cross-examination, the Asogi Papers.
As the warden responsible for condemned convicts, I attended to Mr. Asogi and kept watch over his cell.
Hold it! So, would that mean that you conversed with Mr. Asogi?
Yes, certainly, though there was precious little time before his execution was due. He was remarkably calm, considering his days were very much numbered. In all honesty, he really did strike one as a man capable of mass murder. Yet he confessed in full to the crimes. I know. That's why I felt compelled to ask him one day. I can still recall his reply. I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life. Yes. But he was so tranquil and intelligent. It put me in mind of an Eastern holy man.
And what about the will you saw with him? What can you tell us about that?
It was the beginning of all the drama. I remember it very well, yes. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell.
Hold it! Sorry, guys. And he pleaded with you not to report him, didn't he?
Yes, that's right.
And the luck, bad, but yeah, you did not tell me. A blatant breach of trust that was.
I could see that the man had a noble spirit. I found myself wanting to treat him accordingly.
But according to what you told us 2 days ago, the convict had been strictly forbidden from having any writing materials whatsoever.
Yes, you're quite right.
Ah, so when exactly was the will penned?
That was before the man was remanded in Berkeley, obviously.
Yes, at the prosecutor's office under supervision of the relevant authorities. I personally instructed Asuki to make a will for the benefit of his family and his homeland.
In that case, why was it found in his cell?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, if it was penned at the prosecutor's office, you would have expected that it would remain there for safekeeping, surely?
Oh!
It's curious. There doesn't seem to be any obvious explanation for why it was subsequently found in the convict cell.
Oh, well.
The defense makes an astute point. Well, Governor?
A prison governor cannot be expected to get the inner workings of the prosecutor's office.
In that case, Lord Strongheart, perhaps you can shed some light on the matter.
I'm unable to offer any explanation here and now. I would have to consult with the notary responsible for the will at the time.
The fact that my father's will was discovered in his cell is clearly inconsistent with what was expected. I want to know why. Another inexplicable mystery then.
Well, the thing is about that will. We turned the cell inside out looking for it after the execution, but to no avail.
Hold it!
It was the governor who ordered the search for the will, as I understand it. Is that right?
Yes, and when I reported back, we couldn't find it. He grabbed me by the cravat and yelled
It can't have disappeared completely.
in my face.
Oh, well, it's due to the governor to keep everybody working as hard as they should.
I think the governor needs a wee taste of his own medicine, Mr. Naruhodo.
The point is, it was clearly considered a very important document, wasn't it? But it proved impossible to find.
That's right. Then before I knew it, it was in the morning paper, that blood-curdling article. The executed mass murderer who'd risen from the dead.
Oh, you mean the article based on Mr. Drabbit's experience in Lowgate Cemetery?
Yes, that was it. The day after I'd read the news, I was summoned to the governor's office. And that's when the awful accusation was made.
That you'd aided Genshin Asuku to escape from the prison, resulting in your immediate dismissal.
I'm afraid I really don't remember anything after that.
As the governor of the prison, I had no choice. I couldn't have done anything else. I only found out about the Oscar papers when a directive came telling me to pawn them.
Hold it!
And that directive came from the same source as the one instructing you about the jailbreak.
I, from the top levels of prosecutor's office.
What name was on it?
I did not care before and I did not care now. All I can tell you is that my orders were to do everything in my power to find that document. The directive said it had to be somewhere inside the fellow's cell.
Document? Was that the wording? Document, not will.
Oi, that's what he said.
Am I clutching at straws here? I just wonder if it was really Genshin Asuki's last will and testament that the sender of that directive was after. Continue with your testimony then, witness.
The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in his cell. A kimono, I think it's called.
Hold it!
In Mr. Asuki's kimono?
Oi, the one he brought with him when he was locked up.
Yes, he was permitted to have his personal effects with him during his incarceration, I understand.
That's right, he was granted as much freedom as possible during the few days before his execution.
Indeed, he had a number of items of personal significance, I remember. He was very reluctant to part with them. Some books, that kimono, his sword.
His sword?
Karuma, the famous sword of the Asugi clan. It bears the soul of my family.
I don't doubt it, but I wasn't really getting at that. Forgetting it being the soul of the clan, could the man have had a more obvious weapon? Have some respect to Ryunosuke. Respectful silence?
The warders carry firearms at all times, and the inmates have shackles around their ankles. They couldn't have hurt anybody with that thing.
Still, he was allowed a sword, but no writing materials?
Aye, he wrote that one before he came to stay with us in Berkeley, you see.
Dr. Mikotaba was asked to bring the necessary Japanese writing implements to the prosecutor's office.
A Suzuri inkstone, black sumi ink, and some Hanshu rice paper, no doubt.
I was present when he wrote it. What I'm sorry to say, the letters just looked like a squirming mass of jet black earthworms to me.
We're gonna pursue that, of course. Are you feeling faint, Mr. Widgel? Mr. Widgel!
Sir, it was Scarlet, sir.
What?
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to blurt it out like that.
Less swaying and more explaining would be helpful.
Is it something about the testimony we just heard? Have you recalled something of importance?
Something of importance? Possibly, or possibly not.
I'm unable to tell which way he's leaning, I'm afraid.
My lord, the defense asks that Mr. Widgel be permitted to supplement his testimony with this possibly or possibly not important detail.
Permission granted.
Go ahead, Mr. Widgel.
Yes, it was Scarlet. As I remember it, the document was written in scarlet ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken.
That is strange. Huh. Okay, so let's just press then. Scarlet, you say?
Well, yes. I mean, I only caught sight of it for a brief moment, of course. But even by the dim light in the cell, I remember thinking that it was an unusual color. At the very least, I'm quite sure it wasn't black.
Witness! Is that really what you saw?
Oh, what? Sir!
Is something wrong, Lord Strongheart?
I apologize. Continue.
What do you make of that, Mr. Naruhodo? For Lord Strongheart to be so visibly shaken that way.
Oh, did I ever? You can plainly see the right there is black as the earliest waistcoat.
Well, yes, you're right.
Mr. Widgel, I'd like to confirm one point with you. Did you actually see the content of the document that Mr. Asuku is holding that night?
Oh, well, no. I mean, there was no time. As soon as he's noticed me, he hid it behind his back.
But it was definitely a will, was it?
Yes, it was. That's what Mr. Asuki told me.
The court needs waste no further time on this matter. We have the will in question in our possession. There is nothing more to add.
A will written in scarlet ink. What did Mr. Widgel really see Kazuma's father holding, I wonder?
If you have any inkling, Mr. Naruhodo, you must present it to the court at once.
That testimony doesn't give much away.
So this will really was penned by Kazuma-sama's father. I wonder what he could possibly have meant when he described it as a weapon.
It's starting to sound very much like Mr. Asuki actually had nothing.
But the plan to break him out of jail went ahead, which means he must have had some bargaining power. He must have been hiding something. It's the only explanation that makes sense.
It's starting to sound like Mr. Asuki actually might have had something.
Which is it, Mr. Naruhodo?
I'm not sure, but I feel as though I'm on the brink of understanding it all. Let's listen to all the information again, see what more we can learn. We can't overlook even the smallest detail.
Absolutely.
Sorry, guys. Okay. The document was in the folds of the files that was left in his cell. As I remember it, the document was written in scarlet ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken. Let's have a look at the court record. Let's have a look at the will once more. Last will and testament of Genshin Asugi. I, Genshin Asugi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asugi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, in the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again. But I regret nothing about my chosen path. Huh. So this is a hard one, guys. But also about this statement in scarlet ink, right? And I mean, this is a little far-fetched, but in this autopsy report, it states recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no document in corresponding ink was found. And I find that a little strange. So since we do have left a lot of life left, I'm just gonna present this here. Okay, we are onto something. Scarlet colored writing is what you said you thought you saw, Mr. Widgel. And I believe that's exactly what you did see.
What?
Heavens again, you've no evidence to say that.
Have a look at this report.
That's my brother's autopsy report.
Yes, and there's something in here that's bothered me since I first read it. It states that scarlet-colored ink stains were noted on the fingers of the victim's right hand. Yes, so it does.
Scarlet ink?
Now, I'm not familiar with the habits of the British aristocracy, I freely admit. But I would hazard a guess that they don't all go around with ink stains on their fingertips, do they?
Your wit is not appreciated. My brother was a well-bred and fastidious man. Should ink have sullied his fingertips, he would have cleaned them immediately.
What is your point, Counsel?
My point is this. Whatever Lord Clint von Zeeks was writing in that unusual colored ink, it must have been directly before his death, because he died before he had the opportunity to clean his hand.
What?
I remember something troubled me at the time. At the scene, the lid of my brother's inkwell was open. But Clint was punctilious about such things. It seemed unusual. And no document penned on the color of the ink that was in the inkwell was ever found.
So the document had disappeared. Are you suggesting that the document my father had in his hand that night in his cell was the same document that Lord Clint von Zeeks was writing moments before his death?
Then it was.
If Mr. Widgel's testimony is to be believed, it can only mean that, yes. Mr. Widgel!
Sir!
When you spotted Mr. Asugi with the document in his cell, his precise words were as follows, were they not?
Alright then, but what's on that paper?
A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A last will and testament.
Oh!
If the conversation really did go as Mr. Vigil says, then what we know now completely changes the meaning of what Mr. Asugi said.
You really think?
Mr. Vigil did indeed see the convict with a will. But it wasn't that of Genshin Asugi. It was the last will and testament of Lord Clint van Zeeks.
No! What?
Objection!
This is madness. My brother's last will and testament? That would mean that he had chosen to die.
That is what it would mean, yes.
No! Impossible! That is utterly out of the question!
Lord Van Zeeks.
Clint was pursuing the professor. It consumed him day and night. Whatever happened, he would never have abandoned his investigation before its conclusion. Never! He wouldn't rest until the job was done, until the killer was caught. The idea that he would willingly accept his own death is obscene!
Objection!
And yet, we can be sure that he's writing his will moments before his death. And that Genshin Asugi came to be in possession of that document. So what could the will possibly have contained? Clearly something that couldn't be made public under any circumstances whatsoever. Because armed with that document, my father was able to negotiate with the judiciary for his life. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that to be enacted. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that be to enact that daring jailbreak plot. Yes, there can be no question that the will contained information of the utmost secrecy. Information of the utmost secrecy. Oh! No, it couldn't be. I've heard more than enough. Pursuing this notion of a phantom will nobody can attest to having seen serves absolutely no purpose.
Objection!
No, my lord, that's unacceptable. What did you say, counsel? The last will and testament that Genshin Asugi had in his possession was that of Lord Clint van Zeeks. All the testimony and evidence presented to the court has logically led us to that as a possibility. We have a duty to pursue the line of reasoning to its conclusion. But with no possible means of knowing the contents of the document, there is no line of reasoning to pursue. A reason why Lord Clint van Zeeks, man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned killer. The only explanation that fits those facts is an unthinkable truth that turns absolutely everything on its head. But it's just too hideous.
Mr. Naruhodo, however difficult the situation might become, you work with your client in pursuit of the truth. That's what you resolved to do when you entered the courtroom this morning, if I'm not mistaken.
Mr. Sato.
So hold your head high and keep soldiering on.
Yes, you're right. 10 years ago, in his final moments, Lord Clint van Zeeks left behind a will. A will that Genshin Asugi was able to use as a weapon to negotiate his escape from prison. In all probability, the details in the will were related to the professor case. The defense's last statement is mere conjecture.
What are you getting at, man?
Ryunosuke! As soon as these words come out of my mouth, there's no going back. I believe that the last will and testament of Lord Clint van Zeeks was in fact... I think that it's an accusation, right? It must be an accusation. I'm going with accusation. Obviously, it must have been an accusation.
An accusation?
Yes, revealing the true identity of the professor.
Which would explain why Asugi took it, since it was he who was implicated by the document.
Objection!
No, in that case, the will wouldn't have given Mr. Asugi any bargaining power at all.
Then you're suggesting the accusation was against some other person.
Objection!
No, if that were the case, the two men would surely have collaborated to pursue the culprit together.
Then your whole argument falls down.
Oh, okay, that was wrong.
Oh, can I object to the penalty too?
It's apparent that the defense's explanation has no real substance. This line of inquiry is dead.
Come on, Ryunosuke. I know you. You've seen the heart of all this, haven't you?
No, I haven't. I'm sorry. A reason why Lord Clint von Zieks, a man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned killer. The only explanation that fits those facts is an unthinkable truth that turns absolutely everything on its head. Okay, so what could it be? But just so hideous, yeah, the rest we already had this. So we're just gonna skip that. And we're gonna arrive at the... Okay, so is it a report? So hideous that turns everything on its head. So it has to be a confession.
You can do this, Mr. Naruhodo.
I believe that what Lord Clint von Zieks actually penned that day was a confession.
A confession?
Regarding the mass murderer known as the Professor and his true identity.
Objection!
Enough, Counsel. What are you saying? Do you even realize? A confession about the true identity of the Professor. That would mean...
Lord von Zieks, I appreciate this must be hard to take in. But it's the only explanation that fits. The killer that terrorized London a decade ago and became known as the Professor. The man believed to have murdered 5 members of the aristocracy. Wasn't Genshin Asugi at all.
No, you can't be suggesting...
It was in fact the man believed to have been the 5th victim. Lord Clint von Zieks himself!
It's finally open, is it? Pandora's box. The great Van Zieks family.
They've been thoroughbreds of the British judiciary for years.
And Lord Clint von Zieks, he was a paragon of justice in the capital.
But he was actually a mass murderer, a perpetrator of atrocities in the wildest nature.
If the general public ever found out, law and order in this country, yeah.
My brother.
Oh, this is too awful. Poor Lord Van Zieks.
I wonder though, did he never suspect?
Mr. Naruhodo?
Lord Baron von Zieks is a brilliant prosecutor. Is it conceivable that he didn't realize what his older brother really was?
Order, order, order in court!
Lord von Zieks. The professor made use of an enormous hound as his murder weapon. Tell me, did your brother own a dog?
Yes, he did. Balmung. He was a well-known hunting dog. People called him a giant.
I don't believe this.
When my brother would go hunting in the forest of the grounds behind the house, he always took Balmung. After Clint's death, the creature passed away too, almost as if he were following his master. He was a magnificent hunting dog, worthy of the jewel-studded collar around his neck.
A jewel-studded collar?
That's right. Though sadly, some years ago now it was stolen by a thief who broke into the house in one night.
A jewel-studded collar? Stolen by a thief? It so happens that myself and my colleagues have come across such a collar during our time in London.
How could you?
There was an old emblem attached to the collar too, made of pure gold. It was topped with a small crown and bore an ornate capital letter B.
What? An emblem bearing the initial B?
Oh my, you know it!
It's the insignia of the Baskerville family.
What? The Baskerville? Why is that name coming up now?
Baskerville is the family name of my late brother's widow. The pure gold emblem was a halo, which Clint acquired upon their marriage. There can be no doubt that the collar you've described was Balmong's.
The family insignia of Lord Clint Van Ziek's widow.
There was a considerable amount of blood on the collar when we saw it. Since we know the dog was used for hunting, it could have been from its quarry, of course. But it could equally have been from a human prey. So is it true then?
Clint Van Zieks really was the professor?
Impossible! These Japanese are making it all up to accelerate!
So in fact, the person responsible for the mass murders of nobles and royals was a noble himself. And that threatened to be an enormous scandal that would irrevocably destabilize British society. My father knew that and was using it to negotiate his way out of the unjust charges brought against him. But at the very last hour, those he'd bargained with betrayed him, slaying him mercilessly on foreign soil. Well, can you deny it, Lord Strongheart?
10 years have passed, and still now the 6 million inhabitants of our great capital rest easy believing that justice was done. That though his anonymity, remains, the diabolical murder was caught and executed. Very well then, you may have the truth.
Tell me what Clint really was.
Lord Clint Van Zieks was too pure of heart. When he became a prosecutor and went in pursuit of the black roots of crime, he drove himself into a corner. He came to the uncomfortable realization that to fight the most fiendish of criminals requires one to become even more fiendish oneself.
Clint.
The 19th century was a truly miraculous 100 years for Great Britain, and indeed the whole world. New industry, new technology, and with the birth of the Metropolitan Police Service, new law and order. But these dazzling new developments meant ever deeper shadows were cast on society. Water sullied by factories, air thick with noxious fumes and crime, growing daily to fill the darkness. Lord Clint Van Zieks made it his mission to combat that darkness. But as time went on, it slowly ate his soul until eventually he was consumed. It's ironic, really, and somewhat surprising that the truth has once again been unearthed by a Japanese.
Once again? What do you mean?
10 years ago, your father, Genshin Asugi, turned up at my office one night. The professor?
Yes, beyond all shadow of doubt. You must issue a warrant to search his home at once.
Don't be absurd. The man comes from one of our country's most illustrious families. He's a paragon of justice here in the capital.
Yes, that's the point. That's why none of you British can see it. He's using his noble status as a diversion whilst he commits these atrocious crimes behind the scenes.
Do you have evidence?
Nothing definitive as yet. But he keeps an enormous savage hound on the estate. We need the full support of the judiciary for this. We're up against a member of the aristocracy.
So a large family estate has a fierce guard dog. You should know that's commonplace here in Britain. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly put Scotland Yard onto this based on the tenuous accusation of a visiting student. So I turned down Asugi's plea, and as a result, he took it upon himself to visit the Van Ziek's mansion on his own. You can only imagine now what happened between the two men. Though we know the outcome, of course, Lord Clint Van Ziek's perished.
I don't believe this.
So, in actual fact, Kazuma-sama's father did.
He made the late Lord Van Zieks meet the same fate. He put a permanent end to the professor killings by taking the drastic measure of ending the perpetrator's life.
As soon as I heard, I hurried to the mansion. When I arrived, it was easy to grasp what had happened.
And what about the will?
Asugi must have already taken it. Nothing of that nature was found at the scene. We had no idea of the existence of such a document at that time. I was the only person who knew of the true identity of the professor.
Well, guys, we have breached the half-hour mark quite significantly, but I think that's okay because we unraveled some very serious things here. I think you agree. I think you agree. But I'm gonna call it quits for this episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Resolve. If you want to know how things are going to unfold further, you'll have to tune in next time. See you then.